A rusted wrench slipped from calloused fingers as the mechanic squinted toward the distant plume of smoke rising from the roadside. The dry wind carried the scent of burnt rubber. A sleek, dark silver Mercedes Maybach stood stranded on the edge of a deserted highway, engine hissing, heat radiating off the hood. The driver burst out of the vehicle, mid-30s, tall, rugged, dressed in dusty jeans and a trucker cap, slamming the door with frustration. "Why now?" he cursed. At the threshold of a worn-down garage with peeling paint, the mechanic, grizzled, lean, mid-50s, wiped sweat from his brow and stepped forward with steady determination. No signage, no glamour, just grit. "Need a hand?" he asked. "Unless you can fix a German V12 with duct tape, I'm screwed," the man snapped. The mechanic cracked a half smile. "You'd be surprised what I can do." That broken-down car, that scorching evening, and two strangers colliding by pure misfortune. This wasn't just a repair. It was fate igniting a story worth millions. The mechanic wiped his gritty hands on a rag, so saturated with oil, it was darker than asphalt. The stranger scoffed, glancing at the garage. "You seriously work out of that place?" he asked, incredulous. The mechanic raised an eyebrow without looking up. "She's held together 1,000 stories," he said, voice dry like the air. He popped the hood with a gentle push. The engine hissed like a cornered snake. Luke, tense, stepped back instinctively. "Don't fry it," he muttered. The mechanic gave a low chuckle. "You always this dramatic about overheating?" "Only when it's worth $500,000, Luke replied. That caught the mechanic's attention. He squinted at the car, like re-evaluating a patient. "You travel far?" The man hesitated, then replied, "Far enough to know money can't buy good luck." The mechanic smiled faintly. "No, but it buys new parts." The mechanic leaned deeper into the engine, hands moving with confident precision. Luke paced in the background, kicking dust as he went. "You always out here alone?" he asked. The mechanic grunted. "Town dried up. Just me now." Luke looked around, peeling walls, broken signs, rusted parts like remnants of another era. "Place has a haunted vibe," he remarked. "Only thing haunting it is debt," the mechanic muttered. "And regret." Luke paused mid-step. "You ever think about leaving?" "Where would I go?" The mechanic said, not looking up. "This is the only thing I know how to fix." He lifted a scorched fuse for Luke to see. "And this right here's the only thing between me and rent." Luke stared, finally beginning to understand the gravity in the grease. The sun had nearly touched the horizon. The air buzzed with heat and the rasp of cicadas. The mechanic didn't look up as he asked, "Got a name?" The stranger gave a wry smile. "What, you gonna Google me?" The mechanic shrugged, still fiddling with the engine. "Helps to know who I'm billing." The man hesitated. "Call me Lou." The mechanic nodded. "That your real name?" Luke didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward the car. "You ever fix one of these before?" "Son," the mechanic said, closing the hood with a firm click. "I've fixed engines held together with chewing gum and stubbornness." Luke raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" The mechanic wiped his forehead with the rag. "Nope, but I'm too broke not to try." The mechanic climbed into the driver's seat. Turned the key once. Silence. He grunted. Popped the hood. Adjusted something. Second try. Angry sputter. Third try. The engine roared to life. Luke stood up, blinking. "Holy. How did you do that?" The mechanic stepped out, wiping his hands. "Little bit of know-how. Lot of desperation." Luke looked at him differently now. "You got no idea who I am, do you?" The mechanic shrugged. "Don't care long as your check clears." Luke smiled for the first time. "You will soon." But the mechanic had already walked away, the engine purring like a beast tamed by will alone. Luke sat in the driver's seat, engine humming beneath him, but he didn't drive off. The mechanic turned to walk away. "Wait," Luke called. "You got a name?" The mechanic paused, looked back. Cal, he said flatly. Cal, huh? Luke repeated, letting the name settle. You always fix things that aren't yours. Cal shrugged. Only when they block my sunset. Luke chuckled. You ever think about doing this somewhere bigger? Cleaner? Cal looked around at the empty land, the silent garage, the life it built from broken parts. I did. A long time ago. But life had other ideas. Luke looked down at the pristine dashboard of his luxury car, then back at the garage. You ever wish you said no to those ideas? Cal's gaze hardened. Every day. But regrets don't pay bills. There was a stillness between them, a man in a $1 million car, and another buried in forgotten debt. And yet, they understood each other more in that moment than most do in a lifetime. Cal returned to his garage, settling into a worn metal chair, surrounded by silence and engine parts. He stared at a faded photo tacked to the wall, him and a young boy, both smiling, grease on their faces. The boy's eyes were identical to Cal's, proud, hopeful. A voice echoed in his mind. One day, we'll fix up real race cars, Dad. That day never came. Tragedy and time had stolen that dream. A sharp knock on the frame broke the silence. Luke stood in the doorway, silhouetted by headlights. That your son? He asked, eyeing the photo. Cal nodded, eyes never leaving the image. He was. Luke stepped in slowly, as if the place was sacred. You're not just fixing cars out here, he said softly. You're keeping something alive. Cal didn't answer. He just stared at the boy who'd once believed in him. And maybe, for a second, believed again himself. Luke walked deeper into the garage, eyes adjusting to the gloom. Cal stood, watching him with cautious eyes. You drive a car like that but can't change a spark plug? Cal asked. Luke laughed. I own 50 companies. I've forgotten how to screw in a light bulb. Cal raised an eyebrow. So what are you doing breaking down in the middle of nowhere? Luke leaned on the rusted workbench. Trying to disappear, I guess. Cal crossed his arms. You got people chasing you? Luke nodded. A deal I didn't want. A life I didn't choose. I needed quiet. Cal looked around. Well, you found it. But quiet's not always peace. Luke smirked. Sometimes silence is the only place I can hear myself. Cal gave a grunt that almost passed as agreement. The garage, old and aching, held their truths like old tools, forgotten but still useful. Cal pulled out an old metal coffee thermos and poured into 2 mismatched mugs. He offered one to Luke. Tastes like burnt socks, he warned. Luke took it anyway. Better than silence. They sipped in a rare pause. You really own 50 companies? Cal asked. 52, Luke corrected. Tech, finance, real estate doesn't mean much without real people around. Cal nodded. You looking for people or purpose? Luke tilted his head. Aren't they the same? Cal stared into his mug. Not always. People lie. Purpose don't. The warmth of the coffee seemed to cut the night's cold. 2 strangers, sharing more in a broken garage than boardrooms ever could. What happened to your boy? Luke asked gently. Cal stiffened. Life, he said. Took him before I could give him mine. Luke lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. Cal sipped again. So am I. Luke stood, pacing slowly between the oil stains and scattered bolts. You know, he began. I've hired thousands of people. MBAs, coders, engineers. Never met someone who fixed more with less than you did today. Cal looked up, skeptical. Flashery don't pay bills either. Luke stopped. What if I offered you a position? Cal raised an eyebrow. Doing what? Swapping plugs for CEOs? Luke smiled. Running a restoration division. Classic cars, vintage, real engines, real craftsmanship. Relaunching next quarter. We need someone who knows how to bring life back into dead things. Cal blinked. You're serious, dead serious, Luke said. Call it fate. Or maybe just luck with bad timing. Cal leaned back, processing. I don't have a resume, he said. Luke stepped forward. Good. I'm tired of reading lies. I just want someone real. The next morning, the sun barely breached the horizon when Luke returned, clean-shaven, dressed sharply in dark jeans and a fitted shirt. He carried coffee and papers. Cal was already under a truck, grease on his face like war paint. You come to rescind your offer? Cal asked, voice muffled from beneath the chassis. Actually, Luke said, kneeling, I came to seal it. He slid the papers forward. Cal rolled out slowly, suspicious. You always offer contracts over coffee? Luke smiled. Only to people who save my life with duct tape and a fuse. Cal wiped his hands, scanning the pages. You want me to run an entire department? You've run this whole place alone, Luke replied. With nothing but heart and hustle. Cal looked away, unsure. And if I say no, then I'll keep showing up with coffee until you say yes. Cal cracked a rare smile. Persistent, aren't you? Only when it matters, Luke said. Inside the garage, Cal sat at his workbench with the contract in front of him, untouched. He stared at it like it was a loaded weapon. Luke stood nearby, watching carefully. You nervous? He asked. I'm not a suit, Cal replied. I don't do meetings or PowerPoints. I talk with my hands. Luke nodded. That's why you're perfect. I've got too many people who talk and none who do. Cal tapped the page. You know I dropped out of high school, right? You know I fired a Harvard grad last week who couldn't change a tire? Luke countered. Silence stretched. Then Cal whispered, I haven't left this town in 15 years. Luke stepped forward, gently placing his hand on the contract. Then maybe it's time you let the world see what you've been building in here all this time. Cal stepped outside, squinting into the rising sun. The town, once filled with life, now echoed with emptiness. He walked past shuttered diners, rusting mailboxes, and faded murals that once meant hope. He stopped at the corner where his son used to sell lemonade, just a cracked table now. Memories hit hard. He sat on the curb, staring at a world that had moved on without him. Luke joined him in silence, no words exchanged. Just two men on a curb, both chasing ghosts. Finally, Cal said, You think someone like me belongs in your world? Luke replied softly, Maybe it's not about who belongs where. Maybe it's about building a new one together. Cal nodded slowly. He wasn't just saying goodbye to a place. He was saying goodbye to the version of himself that refused to leave. Back at the garage, Cal pulled down an old duffel from a shelf. Inside, tools, papers, a few photos. He paused on one, his son sitting in the driver's seat of a half-fixed Camaro, laughing. Cal traced the edges of the photo with his thumb. He glanced around the garage one last time, taking in the worn concrete, the dangling wires, the sound of the radio still playing a 90s rock ballad. Every bolt, every stain had a story. Luke waited by the car outside, door open. Cal stepped out, duffel in hand. You sure you want this baggage? He asked. Luke replied, Only if you bring it all. They climbed in, the engine hummed to life, and for the first time in decades, Cal drove away from the only home he had known, with something fragile but real stirring inside him. Hope. The Maybach rolled down the highway, the garage shrinking in the rearview mirror. Cal stared out the window, silent. Luke drove without speaking, sensing the weight of the moment. After a while, Cal said, This doesn't feel real. Luke replied, Most good things don't, until you make them real. Cal nodded. There's a lot I don't know, but you know engines, you know people. That's more than most. They drove past landscapes unfamiliar to Cal, bright billboards, towns alive with motion, highways that promised new stories. Where are we headed first? Cal asked. Luke grinned. To a warehouse full of classics waiting to be reborn. And then, wherever the road takes us. Cal finally smiled, the kind that came from miles of pain and an inch of belief. The past wasn't gone. It was part of the journey now. The warehouse was massive, an aircraft hangar of history. Rows of covered classics waited like sleeping giants. Cal stepped inside, his boots echoing on polished concrete. His eyes widened as he passed a '67 Mustang, a '59 Eldorado, a Porsche 356, all in disrepair, all waiting. Luke walked beside him, grinning. "These are yours now," he said. "To restore, to lead a team, to give them new lives." Cal ran his hand along the dusty hood of a Corvette Stingray. "Feels like opening a time capsule." "Exactly," Luke said. "We're not just selling cars, we're selling rebirth." Cal nodded, a quiet awe overtaking him. "They've been forgotten," he whispered. "But not for long," Luke promised. And Cal, who'd once only fixed what was broken to survive, now stood before machines that symbolized second chances, and maybe, just maybe, his own. Days turned into weeks. Cal immersed himself in the work. He wore a clean uniform now, but the grease never stayed off long. He handpicked a small team, young mechanics all overlooked, like he had once been. He didn't talk much. He led with his hands. And they followed. Luke watched from the mezzanine often, amazed. Cal treated each car like a story, not a machine. When one roared to life for the first time, the entire team cheered. Cal simply smiled, wiped his hands, and moved to the next. At night he stayed late, talking to the cars like old friends. "You got one more ride in you," he'd say softly. His hands were tired. His heart wasn't. The ghosts from his past didn't vanish. But for once they didn't haunt. They helped guide. One evening, Luke entered the workshop with a guest. A woman, polished, precise, and skeptical. "Cal," Luke said, "this is Amanda. She's our lead investor. Wants to see what she's funding." Amanda offered a tight smile. "So, you're the miracle worker I keep hearing about." Cal wiped his hands and nodded. "I just fix what others forget." Amanda inspected the workspace. "It's efficient, but rough." Cal replied, "That's where the truth is." He led her to a finished Jaguar E-Type. "This car sat for 20 years. We brought it back." Amanda tapped the fender. "Looks good. But what's the story?" Cal stared at her, then said, "A father bought it to teach his daughter to drive. She crashed it the day after he died. She couldn't bear to look at it again, until now." Amanda blinked. "You knew that?" Cal shrugged. "I asked." And in that moment, even the investor understood. This wasn't about engines. It was about people. After Amanda left, Luke sat on a crate beside Cal, both nursing cold sodas. "You didn't just win her over," Luke said. "You changed her mind about what business is." Cal nodded slowly. "People want meaning, even when they don't admit it." Luke smiled. "You ever think you'd end up here?" "Every day I worked in silence, I dreamed of noise," Cal replied. "Not chaos, just the sound of things coming alive again." Luke clinked his bottle against Cal's. "To noise, then." They sat there as the crew cleaned up, music playing low. The cars, once dead metal, now shimmered under dim lights, each one a resurrection. Cal looked across them not with pride, but with reverence. They weren't junk, he said. Just waiting for someone to care. And somewhere deep inside, so was he. Late that night, Cal walked alone through the warehouse. Each car now complete, reflected back more than craftsmanship. They reflected parts of him. He paused by a cherry-red Pontiac GTO, running his fingers across the hood. "You remind me of him," he whispered. He pulled out a small photo from his pocket, his son holding a toy car, beaming. Cal placed it gently inside the glove box and closed it. "Drive with me," he said softly. A tear slid down his cheek but didn't fall. For once, it wasn't from grief. It was gratitude. Gratitude that life, unfair as it was, had given him another lane. Another chance. He looked up at the stars beyond the warehouse windows. "I didn't forget you," he murmured. "I just had to find a way to keep going." The grand opening arrived like thunder. Press, cameras, collectors, and curious crowds flooding into the warehouse. The cars gleamed beneath spotlights, each positioned like a sculpture. Cal stood off to the side, uncomfortable in a clean button-up shirt. Luke nudged him. "Smile, you built this." Cal murmured, "Feels like I woke up in someone else's dream." Luke grinned. "You made it real." One by one, guests approached Cal, not with shallow praise, but reverence. A man clutched Cal's hand. "You restored my father's car. I thought it was lost forever." Cal only nodded, overwhelmed. This wasn't business anymore. It was healing. A woman cried softly as she ran her hand along a restored Studebaker. Cal watched her from afar, realizing these weren't sales, they were reunions. And he was the quiet bridge between past and present, machine and memory. Later in the evening, Cal retreated to a quiet corner behind the showroom, loosening his collar. The noise faded, replaced by his own heartbeat. Luke found him there, holding a glass of water. "Crowds aren't your thing, huh?" Cal shook his head. "They clap like I did something big. I just fixed cars." Luke leaned against a post. "You didn't just fix cars. You gave people back pieces of their lives." Cal looked at him. "And you knew all along what this could be." Luke hesitated. "No, I just knew I needed someone who could lead with soul, not spreadsheets." Cal laughed dryly. "Then I guess you're the lucky one." Luke held up his glass. "Maybe. But tonight, you're the reason they're all here." Cal raised his water to toast. "Then here's to the misfits, and the engines that still run." The event was nearly over when a teenager approached Cal, nervously gripping a photograph. "Mister?" the boy asked. Cal turned, kneeling slightly. "Yeah." The boy showed him the picture, an old muscle car, rusted and forgotten. "It was my brother's. He died last year. My mom said we'd never fix it. But I saw what you did here." Cal took the photo gently. "Where is it now?" "Behind our shed. Been there since the accident." Cal looked at the boy's eyes, clear, hopeful, grieving. "Tell your mom I'll come by next week." The boy lit up. "Really?" Cal nodded. "Every car has a story. Sounds like this one's ready to be heard." The boy hugged him quickly and ran off. Luke, who had watched from a distance, stepped closer. "You just signed yourself up again." Cal smiled faintly. "Some jobs, they find you." That night, Cal returned to the workshop floor alone. The showroom was quiet now, lights dimmed, echoes of celebration still faint in the air. He walked between the cars, like they were old friends resting after a long day. At the far end sat the first car he'd fixed there, the Maybach. Luke had insisted they keep it untouched. A symbol. Cal slid into the seat, hands gripping the wheel. "This is where it started," he whispered. The silence embraced him like a familiar coat. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He just sat still, breathing in the scent of oil leather and something new, contentment. For once, he wasn't fixing someone else's mess. He was part of something that finally felt whole. As midnight neared, Luke joined Cal at the Maybach. They sat in silence until Luke finally said, "I never told you why I was driving through that town." Cal looked over. "Why were you?" Luke exhaled. "My father died. I didn't make it in time. I was headed to clear his house, got a flat, then you showed up." Cal processed this, nodding slowly. "Maybe you weren't supposed to make it." Luke looked surprised. "You believe in that?" Cal leaned back. "I believe broken things end up in front of the right hands." They both sat quietly, the hum of the city faint outside. "So what now?" Luke asked. Cal started the engine, smiled. "Now we drive. There's still stories out there waiting for someone to listen." And together, they pulled into the night. 2 men, 2 pasts, 1 road. 6 months passed. The restoration business boomed. Clients from across the country brought in broken pieces of their past. But success came with friction. Cal sat across from Amanda in a glass-walled office, tension thick. "We're behind schedule," Amanda said flatly. 3 builds short this quarter. Cal leaned forward. We're not mass-producing nostalgia. Every car tells a story. We honor that. Amanda folded her arms. This is still a business. Sentiment doesn't pay dividends. Cal stood. If all you see are numbers, maybe you hired the wrong man. A heavy silence fell. Then Luke stepped in. He's not wrong, he said. We promised authenticity, not shortcuts. Amanda glared, but relented. 2 weeks, no more delays. She walked out, heels echoing. Cal sighed, gripping the window frame. That woman could outstare a brick wall. Luke chuckled. She doesn't know it, but she needs this place more than we do. Later that night, Cal stayed behind, alone with a disassembled Ferrari. He moved like a surgeon, each bolt a thought, each wrench turn a memory. Music played low on an old speaker, bluesy, tired. Across the floor, Luke entered quietly, holding 2 coffees. Thought you might be here. Cal didn't look up. She's not wrong. I'm slow. Luke set the coffee down. You're not slow, you're deliberate. There's a difference. Cal tightened a bolt, sighing. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just a relic, one man clinging to dying methods. Luke leaned on the hood. You're the heart of this place. Hearts beat slow, but strong. Cal finally looked up, eyes heavier than usual. Then let's hope strong is enough. Luke clapped him on the shoulder. It already is. Outside, thunder rolled low, storm coming. But inside, the workshop stood steady. The storm hit by morning, fierce and relentless. Water leaked through old roof seams, flooding corners of the warehouse. Cal barked orders, rallying the team. Elevate the lifts, move the low-level builds. Young mechanics scrambled, protecting vehicles with tarps and pallets. Luke coordinated logistics. Amanda even showed up, drenched but determined. Tell me where I'm useful, she said. Cal pointed. Get those files off the floor, now. She didn't argue. Hours passed in chaos. Then, silence. The rain slowed. The damage, minimal. Exhausted but intact, the team stood soaked and shivering. Cal looked around. Nobody ran, he said. Luke added, nobody gave up. Amanda, hands muddy, glanced at them both. Maybe you were right about building something real. And in that wreckage, something deeper was built, trust. After the storm cleared, Amanda approached Cal in the break room, her demeanor softened. You ever think about expanding? She asked. Cal raised an eyebrow. I thought I was already too slow. Amanda smiled faintly. You were right, people want soul. We just have to scale without losing it. Cal leaned back. You mean, make more of this? Amanda nodded. Satellite locations. Same ethos, same leadership. Cal exhaled. That's a lot of moving parts. Amanda placed a folder on the table. Good thing you're a mechanic. Cal opened it. Locations, forecasts, early designs. Why me? He asked. Amanda looked him in the eye. Because you care. And because I forgot how to. Until now. Cal looked down at the folder again, and for the first time, the future didn't feel foreign. It felt earned. That evening, Cal stood outside the warehouse watching the sunset bleed across the sky. Luke joined him quietly. She offered expansion, Cal said. I heard, Luke replied. You thinking about it? Cal nodded slowly. Not because of ambition, because there's more people out there like me, forgotten, but not done. Luke smiled. Then, we give them a place to start again. Cal looked out at the road. Funny how it all began with a flat tire. Luke chuckled. You saved my car. I didn't realize you'd save a whole lot more. Cal's eyes glistened. I didn't save anything. I just listened. The warehouse lights flicked on behind them, humming softly. The storm had passed. But something bigger was just beginning. A legacy born from rust, rebuilt with faith. Months later, a new location opened. this time in a forgotten industrial district. An echo of Cal's old town. The launch was quieter than the first, no press, just people who needed to believe again. Cal walked the floor with a new team. Among them, the boy who had brought the photo months ago, now taller, wearing a work shirt, grease on his hands, pride in his eyes. "You remember how to hold the wrench?" Cal asked. "You taught me," the boy grinned. Cal nodded. "Then teach the next one." Outside, a line of vehicles waited, some barely held together, others time-worn beauties. People came not just for restoration, but for renewal. And at the heart of it all stood Cal, no longer just a mechanic, but a builder of second chances. The machines had changed, but the mission never did. To listen, to restore, to believe again. Amanda visited the new site, not in heels this time, but in boots. She walked alongside Cal, inspecting the progress. "They said it couldn't be done," she murmured. Cal gave a half smile. "So did my bank. And most of my neighbors." Amanda stopped at a cherry-red Thunderbird mid-repair. "And yet, here we are." Cal nodded. "We didn't scale a business, we scaled belief." Amanda looked over the young team. "How many of them were passed over?" "Most of them," Cal said. "Some didn't even get interviews." Amanda turned to him. "But they showed up here." "Because here," Cal said, "the only thing we ask is, are you willing to try?" Amanda looked out over the warehouse, a strange warmth in her expression. "You didn't just save engines, Cal, you built a movement." Cal lowered his gaze, quietly proud. It was always about more than steel. Back at headquarters, Luke stood in the original warehouse alone, walking slowly among the cars. Each one now had a plaque: owner, story, restoration date. He stopped at the Maybach, the first. The plaque read, "The one that started it all." Luke smiled. A photo of Cal and the original team hung behind the car. A noise at the door caught his attention. Cal entered, wiping his hands. "Still admiring your company?" Luke laughed. "It's not mine, never really was." Cal walked beside him. "You started the engine." Luke shook his head. "You kept it running." They stood there for a while, surrounded by the machines that gave them purpose. "Ever think we'd end up here?" Luke asked. "Not in a million years," Cal replied. "But I wouldn't change a thing, even the breakdown." Luke smiled. "Especially the breakdown." At the end of another long week, Cal hosted a small team dinner, folding chairs, oil-stained tables, laughter echoing through the workshop. There were no suits, no speeches, just gratitude. A young girl raised her soda. "To the man who believed in junk and found treasure." Everyone clapped. Cal raised his drink quietly. "To all the broken things, may we never stop fixing them." He glanced across the room, Amanda laughing with a young tech, Luke sketching new build plans with a designer, the boy from the photo now leading a team of his own. For the first time, Cal didn't feel like a visitor in success. He belonged. And he knew it wasn't about restoring cars anymore. It was about restoring belief, in people, in purpose, in second chances. Later that night, alone again, Cal stepped outside and leaned against the doorframe of the original garage. It hadn't changed much, peeling paint, cracked windows, but now it wasn't abandonment he felt. It was reverence. He pulled a small object from his pocket, the same burnt fuse Hud pulled from Luke's Maybach all that time ago. He held it up to the moonlight, smiling. "Wouldn't believe where you took me." He placed it gently on a shelf inside, like a relic. Turning to the horizon, he whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, but to the road, the breakdown, the silence, the storm. Then, without ceremony, he closed the garage door for the last time. Not in goodbye but in gratitude. Because some stories don't end. They evolve. The